Why do celebrities kill themselves? Yes, I went ahead and jumped right in. Hey, I'm Dr. McCleary, licensed clinical psychologist and Navy veteran, and I make mental health education videos for veterans, service members, and their families. So if that's you, consider subscribing. Robin Williams, funny man. Anthony Bourdain, someone who gets paid to eat and travel for a living. Kurt Cobain. If you don't know who Kurt Cobain is because you're too young, go ahead and Google it. Great music. And most recently, the Green Power Ranger. What seems to be happening with celebrities and why do they seem to be taking their life? It's not too different than why anyone decides to take their own life or decides to attempt to take their own life. I will give you this disclaimer. I'm in a profession where I talk about suicide and I talk about and ask people if they're thinking about or having thoughts of suicide on a daily basis. So I'm pretty comfortable having this conversation. Not everybody is. Not even all mental health providers are comfortable having this conversation. But it's a conversation that people need to hear. And thus, here we are. With celebrities, often money, fame, people liking them is not the issue with them. Often, on the outside, it seems like everything is going great for these individuals, which is why often it's so shocking when we find out that one of them has decided to take their own life. Often people that decide to take their own life haven't told anybody about it, which is also why it becomes such a shock to a lot of us. It seems like nobody knew. Nobody knew that these people were struggling. Well, that actually sounds very familiar to me in my practice. I work in the DC area. Okay. And nowhere have I really seen more than the DC area people that look very good on the outside and very good on paper, but are struggling internally. And I used to work in Beverly Hills. So if it's not those outside things that are leading towards someone deciding to end their life, well, what's going on then? And the reality is that internally, and what somebody is saying to themselves inside might tell an entirely different story. I often use this example when I talk to veterans about mental health and how it can affect us and how our perspectives can affect our emotions, which then affect our behaviors. Often I use The Rock as an example. Dwayne Johnson, somebody who, in my eyes, is a pretty well-liked individual. Nobody, or few people, at least in my eyes, and I don't know him personally, seem to have a whole lot of beef with The Rock. Okay, maybe that's because he's like 6'4" and like 300 pounds, but seems to be a very likable guy. Okay. Millions of fans, millions of dollars, seems to have a great life. What if I told you that in my private practice, which I don't even have, I see The Rock 3 days a week because every day of his life, he tells himself that he's not good enough and that nobody likes him. You might say that that's ridiculous. He's got millions of fans. Of course people like him. Here's the thing. that internal dialogue of what we say about ourselves is often a lot more powerful than all the evidence in the world. When people are dealing with very dark and negative thoughts and views of themselves, maybe other people, maybe the world, well, now that brings them to a dark place emotionally. Get real low, get real anxious, get real scared. And when people start to feel those types of emotions, or maybe they start to do things that go along with that. Negative internal dialogue, I'd argue, is the real killer. If you're getting value from this content, go ahead and smash that like button. Or more important than that, share this video with another veteran. And to a certain degree, we all have some of these negative thoughts from time to time. But what we have to do is we have to recognize those maybe very dark things that we're telling ourselves. And we have to get help. We have to recognize that when we start to have negative, dark thoughts, that potentially those thoughts aren't even true. It's kind of like the example that I have with The Rock telling himself that nobody likes him. Nobody? Really? Not one of those, billion Twitter followers? Not one of them actually likes what you do? We have to slow ourselves down enough to where we can challenge some of those negative thoughts. And once we challenge them, then we can actually come up with something that is more true to say to ourselves. Notably, I didn't say more positive. I just said more true. The thing is, when people have had negative, dark thoughts for a long time, oftentimes they feel like they don't have any other options other than taking their own life. And then maybe they decide to do that. When you feel like you're out of options, which is a thought in itself, well, then there's a behavior that sometimes goes along with that. And that behavior is giving up. If you start to have thoughts to where you start to think that suicide or killing yourself or harming yourself sounds actually like a pretty good idea, you're in a dark place. And that's when you need to actually get some help. I hope that you get some help actually before it gets there. But if you're able to recognize some of those dark negative thoughts, my suggestion for you is to talk to somebody about it. Talk to a mental health professional. Talk to your mom. Talk to your spouse. Talk to a friend. Talk to a military buddy that you ain't even talked to in a while. Talk to somebody. If you feel like you have nobody to talk to, which yet again is one of those negative thoughts, there's a hotline that's been going down at the bottom of the screen where people will actually talk to you. They can help you walk you through this moment. Because maybe time isn't up. Maybe it's just a moment in time. Something to think about. But when we think about it, it all makes sense. That's why we have to be very aware of that internal dialogue. It's also why we have to ask about the internal dialogue of our buddies. Just because they look good on the outside, just because they perform on the outside, just because they got a mug that says best Marine on it, got another mug that says best dad on it, got another mug that says best husband on it, does not mean that that person is necessarily doing well internally. So what I ask you guys to do, veteran to veteran, is to ask your buddy, how you doing? And not let them get away with a one-word answer. something not to just think about, something to do. If this video was helpful for you, and I hope that it was, please like it or consider subscribing to my channel if you want to learn more about PTSD or mental health. But more important than that, if this video was helpful for you, then that means it can probably be helpful for another veteran or another service member or another friend or family member of a service member. So I ask that you share it with them. Because at the end of the day, that's really all this is about. One veteran trying to help another.